Welcome everyone to Legion Gaming. I'm your host Donnie, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Deucy.
Hello, everyone.
Deucy, how are you today? I know you're a little sick. But
oh my God!
Despite that, how are you?
I'm happy to be up and around. I recently went back to work, but yeah, I was down and out for about 6 or 7 days.
Yeah, it kind of worked out that we recorded right before the new year, so we're now officially in 2025. The last episode we did, which I thought was really fun, was Iconic Gaming Weapons, which if you haven't listened to that, you should definitely go back and give it a gander because it was a really fun episode. But it's been about a month since we recorded, which a little unusual because before, typically we record like one episode and then we'll record the next one like the following week or the week after because we space them out every 2 weeks. But we bundled two together and now we're here about a month later. So I know you and I have been playing a lot of different games in that time too.
Yeah, it's been helpful because of things that have come up. Like I wouldn't have been able to record last week.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Which would have been fine if we missed. Like it's not a big deal.
But it was also funny that like we recorded the weapons episode so far beforehand that I didn't remember what we were talking about. Like I was thinking, okay, if I listen to this again, did I remember to mention things that I'm thinking about now? And then I listened to the episode. And I'm like, oh, good, we did cover that.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's always like after the fact when you think like I realized I could have put the most obvious weapon for me. I could have put the knife from Resident Evil on there. I felt like that could have gotten a mention because we had a lot of different stuff on there. Like there's a pretty big variety, and I think there's just some things where we packed so much, and there's going to be weapons that we just wouldn't have thought of at the time.
I did think about Resident Evil a little bit afterwards, but then I thought, like, all those guns kind of were your typical guns that you find in other games.
Yeah, and for me, the only significant one was the knife, because that was like when you're out of options. Right?
Yeah.
That was all you had left, and you're like, God, this is awful.
But yeah, a lot of those games, like Resident Evil 1 and 2, maybe even 3, you would just put the knife away as soon as you could.
Yeah, that was like your be-all, end-all. Like, if I'm out of ammo, then I'll go to the box and get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, otherwise, it was just a waste of an inventory slot. But our friend Nick, he always sends us mail, which is always great to hear. He's definitely one of the people who sends us the most email. I wish more people would, out there. You can reach us at legiongamingpod@gmail.com. And, of course, you can reach us on Instagram at Legion Gaming Podcast. And I'm more prevalent on Blue Sky since Threads makes me laugh because they're always talking about we got 270 million users, we got 50 million users, and like no one interacts with anything on there. It's just a dead zone. So I kind of post on there a little bit because there's a couple cool people that I've come across, but we've kind of shifted more towards Blue Sky where we're also at Legion Gaming Podcast. So you can follow us on there. And again, if you want to email us a list or anything you want us to read on air, or even like episode suggestions, really, like feel free at legiongamingpod@gmail.com.
Yeah, please send in those lists too.
They're always fun. We like to hear other people's things because for us, like, I don't want to call us old timers, Deucy, but we have a sort of a breadth of history for gaming. So it's like a lot of stuff we choose is stuff we're fond of, but it's always great to hear other people's perspectives or what they think. And Nick, once again, sends a pretty cool list. He says, hi guys, my favorite weapons are, and he has a whole list. The Blades of Chaos from God of War 1 through 3.
Oh yeah.
Fantastic choice. Gunblade from Final Fantasy 8, which was on your list.
Yep, for sure.
The Wrench from BioShock. Another great choice.
Oh man, I forgot all
that.
That
was like your default wrench. That thing was a really good one.
I briefly thought, but then I thought of this as more of a power-up than a weapon. But when you get the bees in BioShock.
Oh, the from the tonics.
Yeah.
And
like
I guess that's technically a weapon.
It's disgusting, and when it looks like on your hand, there's a whole bunch of holes with bees coming out. But it's hilarious that you can use bees as a weapon.
Yeah, I would love to revisit those games again, but it's just there's so many things to play, and like those games are pretty timeless to me.
I am looking forward to Atomfall because
me too.
It does kind of give you that BioShock feel.
It has a little bit of inspiration from there.
Yeah.
He also included the Lancer from Gears of War.
Oh yeah.
Which is I think I put that on my list, right? Yeah, I did put it on there. The spread gun from Contra.
Yep.
The Master Sword from Zelda. The gravity gun from Half-Life. The BFG from Doom. The Chicago typewriter from Resident Evil 4. That's a good one. My brother was a big fan of that one.
Oh yeah, like a secret unlockable.
Yeah. And the plasma cutter from Dead Space, which I thought was a great one.
Oh duh.
And yeah, fantastic weapon.
I was just playing that last October.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, and then one that even you were shocked that you forgot, the Metal Blades from Mega Man 2. But I pseudo covered that when I said the Mega Buster, which is really generalized, but nonetheless, I wasn't specific to a weapon. But Metal Blades, those things were flat out broken in Mega Man 2.
Oh yeah, they were definitely my favorite. I didn't even realize, for it being my favorite game, I didn't realize how broken they were until years later.
Me neither.
And now every time I go back and play, I'm like, okay, let me get those first and then just run through the whole game.
Yeah. So Nick, once again, thank you for your list.
Yeah, thank you.
He also sent us a list of influential games, which we'll talk about in our next episode.
Yeah. Speaking of lists, everybody get them ready.
Yeah, get them ready because in 2 weeks, we're going to be covering the most influential games ever, which is really just more of a personalized list, and we're gonna have our special guest Randy, our good friend Randy, be on the episode. He hasn't been with us in a little while.
Yeah.
So it'll be really good to have him because he has some fantastic choices. Deucy and I put together a list. We have I think it's like 45 games total. There's some dupes.
35.
35
Yeah.
total. Okay, so you got the unique total,
Yeah.
more or less. Yeah. So I think it's gonna be a really fun episode, as it always is. But today we're gonna be covering one of my personal favorite series on the PS2, and that's Onimusha Warlords. Before we get to that, Deucy, what have you been playing lately?
Not a whole lot.
I haven't been in the mood when you're sick. I get
No, like the first few days, I was just knocked out on my butt, and I was watching a bunch of YouTube stuff. The Switch 2 announcement, that was cool.
I'm very excited about that. And
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to be, I'm just going to, spoil it for everybody. As soon as they announce it for pre-order, I'm likely going to get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the Mario Kart 9, I hope that is a launch title like they kind of alluded to.
I hope so, because that would suck if that was like their teaser sort of a game.
And then they're like,
it's just like,
wait
by
till the
way,
end of the year.
Yeah, it's coming out the end of the year,
Yeah.
or it's coming out 2026. Like that would really suck. So I have a good feeling it's going to be a launch game, and that's going to be like an easy get. Like that alone is going to sell so many Switch 2s. It's ridiculous.
Somebody said it should be a launch game because otherwise, with this little launch teaser, they would have just put like Tears of the Kingdom clips on it or something. But instead, they decided to show that without saying anything. Another thing I watched was on YouTube was Pro Jared, and he got into these long plays of Stardew Valley. And I was like, you know what? I think I can muster that. So while I've been laying on the couch, just, under blankets and everything, I've just been doing nothing but having Frasier on in the background and playing Stardew Valley. And man, I am super hooked on that again.
I really need to get back into that because I played it a little bit when it was on Switch. It was like $10, which is a steal. The developer, I want to say his name was like Curious Ape or something. Like he is still updating this game. There's actually an article that just came out where he's like, I don't know if I'm going to stop updating this game ever. Like I just keep adding more and more to it.
Well, there's tons of mods on the PC version, and Jared started playing it again because the newest update is called 1.6.
Yeah.
That's the official one from Curious Ape, and that is also applied to the Switch version. And it actually gives you new starting options, but I didn't want to go back and do those because I had already gotten a good chunk of the way into the first year, into like the summer season, and now I'm currently right at the tail end of the winter season. I've been playing it that much, and even though I'm like feeling better now, I still seem to be going back to that instead of any of our adventurous games.
That game, and it's popular for good reason. It's sold a ton, and I'm always happy when I see those indie developers. Like as far as I know, he's a one-man developer. Like he's developed this game on his own. He has another one coming out called like the something Chocolatier.
The some of the updates have added a couple more people. You can see them in the credits.
Okay, do they? Okay,
but that's about it. It's
so
not
a very
any
small
bigger.
team, but he sold like 10 million copies or something crazy. But it's a great comfort game. A lot of people love this because you can just, it's the ultimate pro game, really, right? Like you just put it on your Switch, your Steam Deck, wherever else. You just kick back, watch a show like you were, and just get lost in the minutia of farming.
I've gotten through like a season and a half of Frasier because of that. The other thing I got into, because this is like chicken soup for me, was Super Metroid.
Oh yeah,
I was just
another
like
comfort game.
Yeah, I just got to go back into that and play through it real quick. I'm already past the first boss and just rushing through that because it doesn't take any effort for me now. I'm just like, this is definitely for fun.
No, I love those type of games because we talk about all the time. Like I always talk about where there's so many games now. Like there's just a ton that we're always playing. We're rotating through, and sometimes you're just not in the mood for it. Whether you're just worn out from work, worn out from just life, right? And just go back to those comfort games like Mega Man X, or for me it's Street Fighter. Like a lot of those games where it's like, what you're getting into. It's usually short and sweet, or some instances for like Street Fighter, I'll sit there for hours. But regardless, like it's not something that you have to be totally focused on paying attention to. It's just that comfort game. So it's good. Super Metroid's always a great one.
Yeah. And then I've also been playing the game we're going to talk about today. I did find some time like right before I got sick and then a little bit afterwards.
Onimusha Warlords, yes.
Because it is a little frustrating for me. It's definitely not as easy as it is for you, but I definitely wouldn't have been able to play it while I was sick.
I don't think so. Like it's easy. Again, it's easier for me, which we'll get into, later on here, but it is like when I first played that game, just like anything else, it was pretty difficult. And then it's like, once you get used to it, you're like, okay, it's not that bad, right? So it's going to be really interesting to hear what you think because your perspective's more or less fresh. Like you really haven't played it like since probably like 20 years back, maybe. It's been a while, yeah. So it'll be fun to get into that. For what I've been playing, from what I've been noting a lot of stuff I've been playing. Like I've been trying to keep a list when we do our game of the year kind of thing, so I don't really forget anything.
Yeah.
So one of the games I got into recently was one I saw on Digital Foundry. It's Anton Blast, and the best way I can describe this game is that it's essentially a mashup of the Genesis and Wario Land. Like it's just wild, crazy. The character is very loud. He does things like even transforming like these missiles where you can navigate through like an area.
He looks like, well, I saw that Digital Foundry clip, and he looks like Wario, but he also kind of looks like Booster.
Yeah, he does.
From Mario RPG.
He does, very much. So it's a really cool game. It's a side-scroller. It's definitely chaotic, which I think maybe my only sort of critique of that, where it's really fun, but then at most of the levels where you get to the end, you then have to sort of speed run back to the beginning. Like it'll kind of direct you where to go, right? But it's like you have 3 minutes to get back, and like there's so much stuff on the screen, and some of the bosses are uneven. Like I was texting you, I was like, this boss was stupid hard, and then the next one was like, okay, that took one try. So it's really fun. It's a pretty unique game. I think it was like $15, and it's really fun. Like I said, if you enjoy Genesis Wario games, this is it. It's a really solid get. The other one that I've been playing, and this was a stealth drop this week, and I'm always excited for the series, is Ninja Gaiden 2 Black. Xbox had their Xbox Developer Direct, I think is what they called it. They showed off a few games. Two of the big ones that I was excited for was Ninja Gaiden 4 by Platinum Games, which, interestingly enough, Xbox is publishing, yet it's going to be multi-platform, which kind of leads to speculation that Halo might make an appearance on Switch 2 and PlayStation.
Yeah, that's like the biggest rumor.
It is, and apparently Xbox has come out and said, like, we look forward to supporting the Switch 2, whatever that means. But to me, that's going to be like the equivalent of when Sonic came out, right? And it was on the GameCube and PS2, and like, wow, we thought this would never happen.
Yeah, it was so surreal when I played Sonic Adventure on GameCube.
It was crazy, yeah. But nonetheless, Ninja Gaiden 2 Black was stealth dropped. Like they announced Ninja Gaiden 4, and then 2 Black's like, okay, it's day one on Game Pass. I bought it on PS5.
Is it a remaster or is it just a port from back then?
No, it's like a full remaster remake. Like it's all redone in Unreal Engine 5, so it looks amazing.
Had they even announced it like, oh, we might be working on this?
Nothing. That's what's interesting is like they announced nothing about Ninja Gaiden 4 because we saw the Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, that 2D game by Emu.
Yeah.
And that was, as far as I could tell, like that was the only Ninja Gaiden that they were ever talking about.
And I was satisfied with that.
Me too.
I was looking forward to that one.
So the fact that I'm getting a new Ninja Gaiden 4, and then they released Ninja Gaiden 2 Black, which again, like I'm playing on the PS5 Pro, and it looks amazing and it plays amazing. The camera still is 2008 wonky. Like there's a little bit of stiffness, and sometimes you're obscuring the view, but it plays so good. And you know how much I love these freaking action games, Deucy.
Well, that one, because it's so quick, like even if the camera loses you, you just keep hitting the attack button. You're slashing something.
Yeah, exactly. And like, one of the things in because they released Ninja Gaiden 2 Sigma, which was like those sort of remastered versions, and they had some cutbacks there, like they cut down dismemberment and the blood, and here it's just all back, like it's like it was on the 360. And I've been having a great time. I'm only through the first 2 levels, and that game really does challenge you to kind of learn the combat system and the ultimate techniques, because the bosses don't mess around. Like they're pretty fast, pretty brutal. They'll bulldoze you if you're not careful.
I always remember that one being easier than the first one, though.
It was. It definitely was. Like the first game, we were talking about with Randy over text, where it's like that first boss, I think his name is Mirai, and he's like the ultimate threshold for a first boss.
I mean, he made it on my worst boss list.
He did. That's right. Whereas I was like, yeah, this is hard as hell, but once you beat him, like that's the thing I love about these games, where it's once you do beat them, for me, they're fun to learn. But once you get through them, like you do get a sense of satisfaction that you learned how to beat a boss. Like you learn their patterns, you learn how to use your combat abilities and everything. So I'm having a great time with this one.
I think Ninja Gaiden 2, with no additional words attached to it, I played it and I got stuck at the last boss because I didn't have like enough healing items to go into the final fight.
So I don't know if how much they've changed in this version, because it does seem like I'm only playing on normal, but it does seem like the health orbs are at least reasonable. So it's like if you're low on health, you're more than likely get like health orbs dropped by enemies. And then the save points, which I can't remember in the original. I don't remember if they refilled your health, but in here it saves and it refills your health completely. Ooh. So that does help too. And then it's pretty lenient. Like once you die to boss, you just try again, or you can use the talisman to resurrect you, and you get full health. And
middle of the
fight. In the middle of the fight, yeah. So I don't recall if the original had those kind of quality of life improvements, but it's a little bit more accessible here if they didn't.
Well, I remember the talismans. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the talismans are in 2. I mean, as far as like restarting at a boss or like the
No,
check
probably
once you're
not.
filling health, right? Stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think with that final boss, I would always have to restart from the save point, which was granted like close to
Usually
that boss,
pretty close. Yeah.
but you couldn't go around and like collect anything to try and better yourself. You were pretty screwed if you saved right there.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what's changed in 2 Black, but it's fantastic. You have Game Pass, which is great for you because it's just available on there if you want to check it out. I just bought it outright because like I buy everything Ninja Gaiden just like Doom. So I've been having a great time with that. But I guess now is a great time more than ever, Deucy, to talk about some samurais. All right, Deucy, we are here. We are talking about the March 14th, 2001 release, Onimusha Warlords on the PS2. Did you have much familiarity with this back then? Like, did you hear about it before it came out? I assume more than likely it's like, I got it, you borrowed it, and that's how you originally played it.
If I had heard about it, it was probably from a magazine that you had, because I always had just Nintendo Power. And I do remember you and the magazines talking about how it was like Samurai Resident Evil.
Yeah, and that's the best way to succinctly put it.
Yeah.
This is basically Resident Evil with a feudal Japan aesthetic and feel, and samurais and fast combat.
Which is why I wanted to borrow it from you. Like, I know I waited until you beat it and stuff like that, but probably the one reason it kept me interested was because of that succinct description.
Yeah, it's and this game actually had a pretty wild development, or pre-development even. Like, I didn't realize this, but it was actually starting as far back as 1997, because this released 2001. It was a very early PS2 game. Like, the PS2 had launched in America in October 2000. So this was just one of those early, within the first 6 months, PS2 games. And we'll get into it, but you can definitely tell it's got that early PS2 game, probably started as a PS1 game kind of feel to it.
Well, yeah, I keep misremembering and thinking it was on PS1.
Which is really fun.
And I'm like, wait a minute, no, we definitely had PS2s by then.
Yeah, so Capcom originally ideated this game way back in 97 when Yoshiki Okamoto, he told a Japanese magazine, that they had an idea for like a ninja version of Resident Evil for the N64 or maybe the N64 DD. That's the
Which
disc drive.
would have been amazing.
It would have been really nuts if that was the case.
Like, I could see this as a sort of a one-stick game on the N64.
It would have worked with the analog control, and I think it actually would have been pretty solid on there. But for whatever reason, they decided that wasn't going to be, where they landed with this. And the idea was that they were going to have this be like in a ninja house with like traps and combat revolving around swords and shurikens. Later on, they would decide to try and make this on the PS1, and that's when Capcom developer Keiji Inafune, he started the project where he pitched an idea for a Sengoku period version of Resident Evil called Sengoku Biohazard. And this started on PS1 and actually used the Resident Evil 1.5 engine, which is also a crazy factoid that I didn't expect to read. Because that was before Resident Evil 2 became Resident Evil 2, so they're using this literal middle of the road engine based on Resident Evil 1 that's halfway to 2 to ideate a new like Japanese samurai Resident Evil.
Another thing while I was sick was I found this 24/7 live stream of rare Resident Evil games. And one of them is the Resident Evil 1.5. They play through the version that was released.
Yeah, I played a little bit of that because
and
it was released.
It seemed pretty fine. It seemed pretty much like what we ended up getting. So I could see it being used for this just as well, like just as easily.
And it almost feels like, they probably use it as in the prototype phase where they kind of were figuring out, because they had an engine existing and they figured, well, we could try to work this into it. And it didn't work out for whatever reason, because once they saw the PS2 was coming, that's when they eventually shifted development to the PS2. And by this point, the game was 50% done on PS1. So they basically had to scrap whatever they had done and try to rebuild most of it for the PS2. And I think that plays into how the game ended up, because you can kind of tell as far as the length and some of the things, like it seems like it was probably they had a short time to develop this thing.
I was going to say it seemed shorter, and a lot of the the levels itself seem very sparse.
Yeah,
very
there's
basic.
not very many environments in the game.
Yeah,
there's a little bit of variety, but it's not as big of a game as you would expect, especially on the PS2. But so nonetheless, they decided that the PS2 hardware was going to ultimately get to their vision of what this game was going to be, and I think it was the right choice. Because I remember seeing a screenshot for this game when it was on PS1. I think it was an official PlayStation magazine, because I had a description of that. And I remember seeing it, but I didn't know what it was, and it was just like one shot of like, the purple ninja guys with someone else skin. I was like, okay, that's cool, whatever. And then I didn't see this game until I got it from like eBay, because there was this guy I was buying stuff from, and he would consistently have stuff on sale. And I played, I was like, oh, this is the game I had seen back then.
I think it would have looked fine, because Resident Evil 3 looked pretty good.
It looked really damn
towards
good
the
for
end
the
of
time, yeah.
PS1. I don't think it would have been as quick.
No, and I think that's really what helped, transitioning it to the PS2, was the fact that they could take advantage of that, and it actually fits the action combat more than anything else.
Yeah.
Resident Evil kind of works on the PS1 because it's stiff, it's slower,
yeah,
it's moodier. This is supposed to be like more of an action combat game.
This would have been like Tenchu's fighting.
Yeah, that's right.
Slow and deliberate and stealthy.
Exactly. Yeah, which kind of would have been cool. I would have been okay with like a Tenchu Resident Evil, So the Sengoku period was chosen because of its multiple conflicts, and they thought that it could provide an interesting background for this plot. Nobunaga Oda, he's sort of like the big feudal and badass in Japanese history. In a lot of instances, I guess he could be sort of portrayed as a hero or a villain, and in this game, they portrayed him as a villain. The movements in here, which you could tell are really, really nice, is because they use motion capture. And Japanese film actor and singer Takeshi Kaneshiro was the model and the voice actor for Samanosuke, which I thought was cool. This is kind of in the era where a lot of developers are getting famous people and sometimes using their likenesses, which I thought was always fun. But for me, like, being in the US at the time, I have no relation to this actor. So it's interesting that he was chosen to portray him, which probably helped sales over there, I would assume.
I think he did a good job. Was he the American voice actor, or was that dubbed?
I believe that was dubbed. Yeah, I think it was different. Yeah.
But I was going to say, like, his character itself, whether it's the American or him, seemed to be the best out of all the other characters. Some of the characters were a little goofy. It still felt like PS1 voice acting, but yeah, he did a good job.
He was the most realized, and he fit that stoic samurai very, very well, I would say. The soundtrack employed a 200-piece orchestra led by composer Mamoru Samuragochi. So I was reading about this composer, and this is a pretty wild story.
Oh, yeah. I forgot this was about Onimusha, because I'd seen this on like YouTube or something.
Me too. So I thought about this after we did a Resident Evil episode, because Mamoru Samuragochi, he had done the soundtrack for Resident Evil Director's Cut DualShock version, which is the one where we made fun of, where it has like that farty percussive
Oh my God,
thing,
that is,
right?
It is terrible.
So so essentially, there's a lot of controversy around him because he's a Japanese composer who said he was completely deaf, and the media had dubbed him sort of a digital age Beethoven. And then it turns out in 2013 that he was being interviewed for a magazine, and the interviewer reported that there were some inconsistencies in his disability and his deafness statement. So there's instances where the interviewer would see that he responded to questions before
he reacted.
He reacted to a question before the sign language interpreter could finish. And he would, get up to open the door when the doorbell would ring. So the interviewer decided not to publish the interview because he's like, this is a little suspicious. He or she, I don't know who was the interviewer.
Yeah.
And it turns out in 2014, he ended up publicly admitting that his music had been ghostwritten since 1996 by Takashi Nigaki, who's a composer and part-time lecturer at this music school in Tokyo. And that ghostwriter said that Samuragochi was not deaf. He had posed as a deaf person to generate mystique around his abilities, and he did not actually need a cane to help him walk, and much of his liner notes in his music were fiction. So he had no choice. Samuragochi had no choice but to release a statement that he did have a grade 2 physical disability certificate after losing his hearing, but he ended up regaining some of it, quote unquote, and that eventually he was ashamed of living a lie, and that at some point he had to sort of give back his certificate because he said that he had some loss of hearing, but he was not to the degree that would be actually officially diagnosed as a disability, right?
Oh,
so it's like he had some hearing loss, but not to the extent that he said
but don't we all?
Yeah, exactly, right? It's like, cool, I'm almost 40. I'm sure I can't hear as well as when I was 20, right? So with this, they basically took his credits away because, he had won awards and whatnot, and I forgot, there was some other, a couple accolades he had gotten, but he also had to return those because he's just a sham. Like, he was just a scammer, and like he had done the soundtrack for Onimusha Warlords, and actually that soundtrack had to be re-recorded with the remaster because they wanted no part of the original soundtrack.
Like, when you say re-recorded, did they just change up the songs completely?
I think they just, whatever they did with an orchestra, I don't know to the extent of, if they got a full 200-piece orchestra again or something, but they re-recorded it, and I assume, try to mimic as much as they could. But this was just like a fascinating story when I read. I was like, God, what a shit show this was. Like, it's worse because you're portraying yourself as deaf, and you have this disability, and like it's a complete lie, and you got away with it for like 20 years. It's unbelievable. It's such a crazy story. So I don't know what he's doing now. I'm sure he's just living the hermit life and on his own business. But it's like you have no credibility at that point.
I wonder if so. They said he was ghost written since '96, which means that was around the time of director's cut Resident Evil. And I wonder if that ghostwriter made the sounds and the music hilariously bad to make it seem like a deaf person made this.
That would be an interesting point where he just, might have crapped out a soundtrack where it was because that was critical. The people were critical about that for good reason.
And what if he was like trying to get people to be like, hey, look at what this quote unquote deaf guy, maybe he knew.
Yeah.
Look what this quote unquote deaf guy
the
made.
ghostwriter knew, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'd been personal friends. It's just crazy that both of them were in on it. And then it just, at some point, it took an interviewer, 17 years later, to be like, this seems off. Something doesn't make sense here.
The ghostwriter was probably like, hey guys, here's some clues. And nobody took it. They were like, oh, Resident Evil, that's a great game.
Yeah.
And then he started getting awards, and the guy's over there in the corner going, oh, okay.
It's crazy. Yeah. It's a wild story. Like when I was reading about this, and again, I had heard about him because I didn't know too much about him, but I had heard there was a composer who had gotten controversy for this fake lie that he was living, but I didn't realize he was actually connected to Resident Evil. Like I'd heard it previously, and I forgot to mention on our episode.
Yeah.
But then I saw him come up with Onimusha. I was like, oh my God, it's so crazy. And as far as I saw, these were the only two credits he had was Resident Evil Director's Cut, DualShock Edition, and this. So he didn't get too far as far as gaming was, but it's wild that like everything else, his composing career is just over with good reason. Like you should not be able to lie about a disability and get away with it and profit off it. It's terrible. Yeah. Additionally, this is a fun factoid that I remember reading about, was that a glitch in the early version of Onimusha actually led to the juggling mechanic in Devil May Cry, which I remember reading in, I think it was official PlayStation Magazine back then. Essentially what happens, Hideki Kamiya, who created Devil May Cry and Resident Evil, he had come across a glitch in Onimusha where he was slashing at somebody and they got stuck in the air and you just incessantly slashing them.
Nice.
And he thought that'd be cool to adapt into an actual combat system for Devil May Cry. So I thought that was, again, a little bit of Onimusha and Resident Evil DNA in Devil May Cry, which we talked about in I think it was the Alchemic episodes where Devil May Cry was supposed to be Resident Evil 4. So Capcom, like everything's just a big old stew over there between all their series is what it is. And additionally, Capcom spent about $5 to $10 million marketing the game, which I feel like that's a reasonable budget. I don't know what budgets were back then. I think this was well promoted back then because this was a pretty flagship PS2 game in its early time.
Oh yeah, I saw ads for it in like every magazine that covered PlayStation.
Exactly.
There was always like a one-page thing for it.
Yeah, it was a huge deal. And the reviews were really good, which we'll get into as well. But it was definitely like again like that big PS2 game that I think was needed at the time because like most systems when they launched, there's not a whole lot coming out for it. For me, like the biggest launch game for PS2 was SSX, and I actually liked Madden a lot.
I didn't realize that was a launch game.
Yeah, that was part of the launch crop with Ridge Racer 5. Tekken Tag was another big one, right?
I got my PS2 kind of late, so I had a little more variety or options to choose from.
And you it borrowed a lot from me too, because I'm sure I'd gotten stuff at the time. You're like, here's SSX, give it a shot, That would be a fun one to cover too, SSX. I would love that.
A lot of EA Big.
Yeah. Oh, EA Big episode. I like that one. Yeah. All right, so there's a couple of versions of Onimusha that we'll also kind of talk about. So there was Genma Onimusha. This was an enhanced port that came out on the Xbox in 2002. The bigger key here is that it had better graphics and it now supported 5.1 Dolby Digital Audio. They included 3 new armors for Samanosuke that they completely took out the 3 armors that were in the PS2 version. They redid them. I'm not sure it was because it was just Xbox was like, we want something unique, or they wanted to make this like the more definitive version, more or less.
I feel like in the console wars, they were like, here, don't even pay attention to the PlayStation 2 ones. Here's our armor.
Here's the exclusive armor.
Yeah.
A couple other changes they had is that there's a new tower. I forgot what it's called. I think it's called like the Ogre Tower or something like that. It's sort of like the Bloody Palace in Devil May Cry, where it's like, I think it's 20 levels or 30 levels. You just get like rewards and a few other things if you go through each floor. The difficulty has been increased with some new enemy placements, and then they also added a tug of war system for some of the souls. So there's a green soul in here, where it's if you collect 5 of them, you can go into, I think it's called like ogre mode or something like that, where Samanosuke turns into like this like almost like an Akuma looking thing, and he has an enhanced attack power. It's kind of like Double Trigger, which we were talking about, and he also recovers health. There's also a killer doll enemy that's scripted to appear at certain points of the game. Like she has these almost like Edward Scissorhands. She can't really be killed as far as I could tell. She just follows you around in certain sections of the game. And also, you can now charge weapon attacks, so you have a little bit more versatility with your combats. That was really the biggest differences. I think those are pretty substantial.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, the remaster doesn't include that version, which I think really, really sucks. Like, it would have been nice if they made sort of a definitive remaster where you had both the original PS2 version and the Xbox version. The remaster, which is what you and I played most recently, it upgraded the graphics, so everything looks a little bit smoother, looks really nice. They have support for tank controls and 3D movement controls, like with the left stick.
That was unique. Like the D-pad does the original tank controls, and then the stick is the new setup, which I wasn't used to at first. But then when I tried to go back to the tank controls just with the D-pad, I was like, man, how did I play this back then?
Yeah, it's the tank controls are fine for the time, right? Like back then, because that's all you could deal with. But I actually think the 3D control here actually works to its benefit. It actually makes combat a lot easier.
But combat, it makes easier, but just doing the screen transitions is still a little wonky.
It is. It still has that issue.
The camera changes, and then you're holding down to go forward, and suddenly you're going backwards. Mm-hmm. You actually go back and forth between cameras a couple times.
Yeah, that's that's been a problem since, again, Devil May Cry back then. Like, I remember doing that where, like you said, you'll be going up, the camera changes, and all of a sudden you're going down because you're still holding up.
Yeah.
I don't know how they solved that, but it hasn't been solved in like 24 years at this point. I mentioned also they re-recorded the soundtrack, and one of my favorite features of the remaster, as small as it is the ability to quick swap your weapons, which means you're not diving in the menus.
When I read that, and because I had forgotten about the old one, but then it sort of like was a lightning strike. I was like, oh man, I do remember having to constantly pause,
switch, select. Yeah, so it was a little bit clunky.
I think, we were kind of used to that though with Resident Evil because you had to switch guns with the menu. But in this game, you want to be able to switch a little quicker on the fly because there are certain doors that unlock with the certain powers. Certain enemies are taken out easier with certain swords. It's not like in Resident Evil where you like, okay, I'm going into this room with a shotgun.
Exactly.
And whatever's in there is going to be killed by the shotgun.
Yeah, like the combat in here is not so fast that you need to switch weapons. It's not like, again, not like a Devil May Cry.
Yeah.
But it does help that you can just immediately, I think it's like the left triggers or whatever, where you can swap between them.
R2.
R2, there you go. So you have 3 weapons in here, and it helps that you can just swap them because, like you said, you have to get through doors and whatnot. And, it's just a one little quality of life enhancement that I think goes a long way in this game because it means you're doing less menuing. So that was a change that, again, I had also completely forgot about too because I haven't played the PS2 version in a long time.
The other quality of life, I don't know if it was for the remaster or if it was for Genma, but the original didn't have a lock-on.
You could hold block, which was like it would face your enemy and do like it's not like a lock-on, but it's like it would kind of just keep them focused. But yeah, there wasn't a true lock-on where you could kind of go like Z-targeting where you could roam around enemies.
Because I feel like now the remaster has that. Like, L1 is block, R1 is lock on, but you can't use them together, I noticed.
Yeah.
Which is a little wonky. Sometimes in the heat of battle, I forget which one's which. So I end up just slash. But when I read that, it's tank controls with no lock on, I was like, God, really? How did I play this?
It was a lot, like I said, it was a lot harder back then. Like now I can breeze through it.
Yeah.
Back then, like it's almost like you're contending more with the controls in the game more than the game itself.
Yep.
Right? So it's fine. But the remaster, it's $20 normally, which, we'll get into reasons why. I would say like it's kind of hard to recommend that 20 because it is a very short game. It's short and sweet in my eyes, but it's almost always on sale for like $4, $8.
Isn't it on PS Plus now?
No, I think it was $4. It was like $4 on PS Plus or something like that. It's always inexpensive, and at that price, like $4 to $10, absolutely worth it. 20, just know that you're getting to a game that's 24 years old, that's remastered with some enhancements, but it's still rooted in a 24-year-old game.
Yeah.
All right, Deucy, let's get into some review scores. We have it's always fun to go through reviews from back in the day. So GamePro reviewed this, issue 151, April 2001. They gave a graphics 4.5 out of 5, sound of 5, control of 4 out of 5, fun factor of 5. They thought it had breathtaking visuals with awesome audio effects and a sweeping music score. They wish there were more controller configuration options and that enemy targeting is shaky. And they said that the PS2 finally gets an A title from one of the best action adventure games to date, which I think is totally agreeable at that point in time.
4.5 is fine. I don't disagree with the scores or anything, but I don't know what they mean by breathtaking visuals when, like I said, it was just sort of like, yep, we're in Japan.
Yeah.
Like, it was just there.
Also, like, again, you have to consider what graphics were in 2001. PS2 is still very, very new. You're not playing PC most of the time, but it's like it has like all those visual effects, like the thunder, the The big magic effects with your weapons. You know, the backgrounds are pre-rendered, but they look really good. They're not nearly as blurry as they were before. And also, like, you know, all the character models look a lot better than what you'd see in the original Resident Evil games.
Are these pre-rendered or 3D?
The background is pre-rendered.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I don't know, Resident Evil 2, when you're outside in the city, and even when you're in, like, the lobby of the police station, has some really great looking pre-renders, and that's on PS1. And then I thought about, like, Resident Evil Code Veronica had been out on Dreamcast, and that has really good 3D visuals.
But you also consider, like, this was a PS1 game first. Like, they were halfway done with it. So I don't think they
did have to rush something.
Exactly. And also, Onimusha 2 still had pre-rendered backgrounds, which is really interesting. That was 2002. It wasn't even until Onimusha 3 that they went fully 3D with the environments.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which I would love to play through those again. I have them. Unfortunately, there's no other way to play them except on PS2.
Jesus.
Yeah, they haven't been re-released.
I've never played 2. Oh, wait. I can't remember if I played 2 a little bit. I never played 3, but I do know that it has like Jean Reno.
Jean Reno. Yeah, that was really great. And that one also has a really great time displacement mechanic because he's like in the future.
Oh yeah.
And Samanosuke is, you know, in feudal Japan, so it's really great. I would love to revisit that one. EGM reviewed this issue 141 in April 2001. These are all out of 10. They give it a 9, 7.5, and a 9. The best feature, graphics are insane. Worst feature, short playtime. One reviewer said that it improved on Resident Evil's formula with its graphics, character models, and great gameplay, but they criticized the 3-hour playtime. The other reviewer who gave it a 9 said it's short, but so is Metal Gear Solid, and loved everything else, including the weapon upgrade system and fast-paced gameplay.
I feel like Metal Gear Solid is longer than this.
It's longer than this, for sure. It absolutely is. Like, I mean, Metal Gear Solid is not that long of a game, you know, but it's not 3-4 hours short. If you rush through it, but not your initial playthrough.
I'm not going to hit that 3-hour mark. I saw, you know, every time you save, it has the little timer counter. I think I'm already up to like an hour 57.
So when I had beaten it just this last time, I had actually gotten the trophy on PS5 for beating it in under 3 hours. So it's possible.
Nice,
I think I was at like 2 hours and 50 or something like that. I was really close to the wire there.
And I've only died about like 3 times.
It's pretty infrequent. Like I said, once you know what to do in this game, it's not that bad. Like there's some, you know, some hurdles you have to get through, but it's pretty reasonable as far as difficulty. The reviewer who gave it a 7.5 didn't like that it didn't have a lock-on system, which I think is fair. He said the story was a snoozer and too short of a game at 4 hours. And I thought this was a little bit dismissive and a little excessive. He says, in the current sea of mediocre PS2 titles, this one is the best you'll find, which I think is just a little too brutal. Like, it's a really good game, right? Like, I'm not just totally disagreeing with what he says, but I'm like, mediocre? I don't know if I'd put that in the mediocre tier.
So the weird thing I thought was I had some criticisms at the beginning, like that whole opening war that they're in where Nobunaga is going and then he gets killed and everything. I don't know if it's the remaster, like re-recorded sound or what, but the music does not fit feudal Japan.
It's a little bit at odds with it for sure. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. And then the voice acting kicked in and it was very basic. And I was like, but I'm so used to things like Ghost of Tsushima now, where you are very spoiled.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would actually love like well, I know they're bringing out the new Onimusha that was announced last year, but if they could have done like a remaster remake of this first one, the way they've done Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 4, I'm sure they would update it a lot to be like Ghost.
Oh, I agree. I think they would definitely take more influences from
and
games.
And it would be awesome. I would love the way you have to find items and find all these little notes and things, just like Resident Evil, and then still have these, you know, sword attacks and magic powers and things.
Yeah, the remaster, it's totally serviceable. That's the thing. It's like, it's just a remaster. There's no remake to it. It's just a really enhanced port of the original game with some enhancements.
Another gripe that I have, and I don't know if this was in the original, the map.
Yeah.
The map is on the left stick, and I constantly turn it on while I'm in the middle of a fight.
Well, that's what sucks. So the original did have the, I think it was L3 map to the map.
Yeah.
But, you know, again, you're using tank controls back then.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So it's like, even if you're using the stick, you're not going to be using like a 3D stick moving around.
No.
So it was probably more infrequent than it is now.
I definitely click it when I'm, you know, going forward and trying to turn around real quick. And you do a lot of dodging and running in this game.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm constantly clicking on the map and I'm going, oh.
I got used to that because there are some games I do that as well. Like I'll be clicking the stick because I'm just moving, especially when there's like it's an action game.
Yeah.
But in this game, it wasn't as frequent. Like I was just used to it to where I wasn't clicking it as much. Couple more reviews we got here. So I included Official PlayStation Magazine. I loved this magazine back then. I had a subscription. They reviewed issue 43, April 2001. This is when they were on a scale of 5. They gave it a 4 out of 5. They said that it does more with the RE formula than any game before it. They praised the amazing CG intro, which I agree was really mind-blowing at the time. They loved the hack and slash gameplay with magic variety, but they thought the story falls short with the cliche premise and loose ends. And they point out the doppelganger boss fight, which has no explanation, which I completely agree with. Like later in the game, when we get into do it more, like you fight this doppelganger Samanosuke, and he's just there. He exists. You beat him. That's it. No explanation for why he's there.
Well, I mean, that was the thing of the times. Was like, Mega Man had some clone fights.
You had Proto Man appearing out of nowhere.
Link fought the Shadow Link in the Water Temple. Yeah.
And this reviewer also said that some people might not be able to justify the $50 price tag for 5 hours, which I think is totally valid, especially because there's some instances where you die, you have to rewatch cutscenes because you can't skip them. But they said overall it was a great ride and it's a must play. But I agree with them, like $50 for 5 hours, and I hate putting a dollar amount to enjoyments and hours because I always go back. Turtles in Time, $80, and it's half an hour long, 45 minutes, maybe an hour at most, right? But it's really just, it depends on you if you feel like you're getting enjoyment out of this. I think it's a great 5 hours, but $50 is a little rough for the time.
I mean, was there even unlockables or like a new game plus or anything?
There was a new game plus, but there was an Oni Spirits mini game where you just like destroy these pots and you get like a reward at the end. There is the Dark Realm that we'll talk about where you go through each floor and you get the Bishoman's Ocarina, which unlocks like the ultimate sword in the game. Whereas if you beat Oni Spirits, which is a pretty tough mini game, I think there's like 12 stages, you get the Bishoman's sword to just cut through the entire game. It just makes it like ultra easy mode at that point.
Nice.
So there's a little bit of replay value.
Give
but
me
again,
that.
yeah, exactly. But you don't unlock that until you beat the game.
Oh yeah,
once, right?
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of replay value, but it's not as extensive as one might expect for $50. And a couple other shouts, since we're in the future era of 2001, I took down a couple of reviews from IGN and GameSpot.
Oh, neat.
IGN gave it an 8.9 out of 10, and GameSpot gave it an 8.4. And really, they had the same criticisms as all the other reviews where they said that, the story's kind of weak. They had some issues with like the lock-on, but they thought that despite the short length, it's a really fantastic action-adventure game.
Yeah, it holds up still.
It does. All right, Deucy, so let's get into the story real quick before we get into our impressions for the game. So this takes place, as we mentioned, during the Sengoku period of Japanese history. This was known as the Warring States period. This was about the time between mid-1400s to 1600s. The game, you focus on a samurai named Samanosuke Akechi, as he's part of the Akechi clan. And he fights Nobunaga Oda's army, and basically Nobunaga is killed in the middle of this battle, and then he's sort of resurrected because you find out that these demons that are called the Genma, they have sort of come to Earthrealm, as I'll call it, and they're kidnapping Princess Yuki of the Saito clan because she sends a message to Samanosuke saying like, hey, my servants, these people are just disappearing. I think monsters are doing it. I don't know what's going on. Can you come and investigate? Much like in Resident Evil where it's like,
oh yeah,
it's in our Bravo team. They're dead and gone. We can't get a hold of them. Find out what's going on. There's probably not good. The game begins with the Battle of Okehazama where Samanosuke is kind of watching the Yoshimoto clan fight Nobunaga. Nobunaga's killed. And a year later, that's when he gets the message from his cousin, Princess Yuki, saying that, you got to figure out what's going on here. Samanosuke attempts to save Yuki, but then he's defeated. And that's when you fight that ogre at the beginning of the game.
Oh, yeah.
And that's when, at this point in the game, you get the main gimmick, which is the Oni Gauntlet. So Samanosuke, in his death, is visited by the 12 Oni, also known as Yokai, which is sort of like, they're demons and ogres in Japanese folklore. It's also part of that game Nioh, if you haven't played that. It's like that Souls-like. That's, to me, it was the proxy to Onimusha, even though it's insanely hard. So you get this Oni Gauntlet that steals the Genma souls. The Genma are the bad, like, demon ogres you find in the game. And then later on, you find a scientist named Guildenstern who reveals that the Genma have resurrected Nobunaga because they want to serve him.
That's a scientist?
Yeah.
I mean, I know
he's really goofy.
He has a lab in there, but
yeah. So basically, Guildenstern, the whole idea that the whole reason they kidnapped Princess Yuki at this point is because they need like the pure blood of a sacrifice to basically power up Nobunaga when he's resurrected. And then later on in the game as well, you what's her name? Her brother's name is Yumimaru. That's the guy, the boy. Excuse me. And they attempt to kill him because the idea is like the more sorrow she has, right, the more pure her blood is, which then makes Nobunaga more powerful. And really, it's to serve. There's a Genma god here named Fortinbras who's sort of like behind everything. He's sort of like the lead reason why they want to resurrect Nobunaga. And you go off and fight him at some point, but they really are just, you're rescuing the two characters, Princess Yuki and Yumimaru, because they're trying to be sacrificed so Nobunaga can thrive and take over Japan.
We need that extra sad blood.
It does, yeah, exactly. There's always something, I watched that movie Nosferatu, and it's like kind of the same thing where it's like you have to be like a willing participant to sacrifice yourself and stuff.
So weird, a thing too in the Resident Evil lore is that in Resident Evil Survivor, there's this note, and that's that really bad first-person game, where like to get the tyrant virus or to get the stuff that makes a tyrant instead of a zombie, you have to get these people really extra scared, and then you have to extract I don't know, fear juice from them. I don't know. It's like Monsters Inc. I don't know. They have to be like extra scared, and then you have to take out a gland that has that, and then that makes a tyrant. And I was just like, what?
It's pretty wild. And again, like this story, like, you know, when it's summarized in such a way, like it sounds kind of cool and well thought out to an extent, but when you're playing the game, its short length really doesn't lend you to all of this. Like there's some notes you'll find which I think help.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very Resident Evil like, where you find like bits of lore where people are describing the events of what's happening, like with Nobunaga or, you know, wherever else, like the demons invading.
I think the other problem with this is that the way it's delivered, like Guildenstern, he has the weirdest voice.
It's the goofiest thing ever.
And I can't pay attention to the exposition that he's trying to give me when I'm just laughing at his voice.
It's a really weird choice. I don't know what he sounds like in Japanese, but yeah, in the US version, he's got like this high pitched, almost so like doofus voice. It's
in
weird.
fact, I wrote a note where like I didn't remember much from this game. I know I borrowed it from you, and I didn't remember how far I got. But when I got to that cutscene with him, the first time you meet him, I was like, "Oh my god, I remember this!
Yeah.
This is a weird memory to have unlocked in the back of my head because of that voice."
He's one of the more memorable characters, perhaps for reasons that he shouldn't be memorized. You know,
I call him Nautilus Skeleton Head.
Yeah, he looks cool. Like I think all the enemy designs here are pretty badass too. Like you find a lot of these, like the ogres that are just like these big ol'. They're bigger than Nemesis. I think that's the thing too. Is like they definitely scaled up the enemies in here because again, it's on the PS2, not PS1. But I think that was one thing that blew me away back then was the size of some of the enemies.
Yeah,
like you fight a boss, Marcellus, who's like this really big armored skeleton guy.
He was cool.
He's like a tank.
That's where I got to in my playthrough was him for the first time on the roof.
Yeah,
I just laughed at his name though because I couldn't help but think of Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, and like I wouldn't think of him as a Marcellus. It's
no,
really, like the name choices are here are very bizarre. Like he has probably one of the weirdest ones. So what do you think, Deucy? Because for me, you know, I could talk about this game. I really love it, and I could finish it pretty quickly. I think it's one of those games where once you learn that you can kind of bulldoze most instances of enemies because you move so fast that you have a lot of versatility in what you can do with enemies, and sometimes you don't really have to fight them.
I enjoy it, but I think I told you, like when I first started playing it again, it felt kind of like a slog because it could benefit from a lot of quality of life improvements. The whole soul thing, you know, you have to actually push a button to suck it into your gauntlet. That needs to be improved a little bit for me because the souls are key to upgrading your weapons and your magic. And then when you upgrade your magic, that's what gets you into doors to progress. I don't want to have to grind because while fighting, maybe some of the souls escaped.
Yeah.
And I'm like, damn it.
And I think that's, I think that's the thing that was, because that was annoying when I first played the game for sure, because there's instances where they just drift away, you know, like there's enemies that are attacking you, like there's some like the rolling guys that look like Blanca rolls.
Yeah.
Like they could be getting your way while you're trying to absorb the souls, because the idea here is pretty much all the enemies you kill will release colored souls. I think there's yellow, which is just sort of like a general one, right?
That's their life.
That's life?
Yeah.
Oh, it was life? Okay. I was already thinking differently. I was thinking blue, which is Ninja Gaiden.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's, I think is it red?
Red is for
your magic power?
Red is for the leveling up.
Leveling up.
And blue is the magic, I think.
Blue is magic, yeah. That's right. Because you have a magic meter in here, and each of the weapons, there's 4 total. So you have the katana, which is sort of like the beginner weapon of sorts. Like that's what you start with. And it turns into Ryzen, which is like this thunder slash blade, which is really cool.
That's my favorite so far.
I think that's the most badass looking one.
Yeah.
You get Enryu, which is this flame dragon sword. You get Shippu, which is one you just got called the Gale Blade. It's like this double-edged, I guess we'll call it staff.
A staff with 2 knives on each side.
Yeah, and each of the weapons has its own magic text. When you hit triangle, they do some sort of, you know, like Enryu, the flame one, like he throws like this big sort of trail of flames in front of you, which can, you know, kill all
That's
the enemies in
yeah.
front
It's
of you.
funny. Like I like the lightning sword, but I like the flame magic.
Yeah, because it's a great get off me kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then the Gale Blade that you get, that has like a area of effect attack that gets all the enemies around you.
Yeah, these are all elementals. So one's lightning, fire, wind,
Yeah.
stuff like that. I don't know if there's an earthquake or anything like that.
No, those are the only three. It's
That
just
would've
those
been cool.
three. Yeah. And then you get the Bishman sword, which I talked about, and that's called it's the ultimate sword because it bears the name of the god of war and it can kill most enemies in one hit. But like I said, you have to get through the Dark Realm or you have to beat Oni spirits to even use that thing. So it's almost just, like I said, easy mode after the fact. But your initial 3 weapons that you collect, those are all useful in their own ways. I relied mostly on the Thunderblade a lot because it seemed to be the most versatile. And then the Gale Blade works really well on certain bosses, which you'll get to a boss later that we'll talk about. Her name what was her name? Hekuba. Like this big old bee-looking hornet boss. She's really easy with the Gale Blade thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have to tie it back, but you collect those souls to level up those weapons and also level up their magic attacks because, like you said, you really can't progress in this game until you level up the magic part of the weapons because each of the doors has a separate level and a different element to get through. So it's like you might see a blue orb, which means you have to be level 1 with the Thunder Blade to get through, the Lightning Blade to get through. Or later on, you'll get to where it's like three green orbs to get through a door, which means you have to level up the Gale. So in that instance, I could see what you mean where you have to grind, right?
Yeah.
Because for me, when I got through it and I could beat it, I did just end up collecting souls to level up the magic attacks. But at the same time, like if this game is difficult for some, you can also just level up the attack power of each weapon, and that could also help you too.
And when you think you've gotten a lot of souls because it'll fill up the bar and then it'll give you a ×1 and then it'll fill up the bar again ×2 and you're like, oh wow, I have a ton. And then you start hitting the X button to level up your magic and the bar is crawling to level up. I'm like, what in the hell do I need?
So that always irked me back then too, because it looks like you have so many souls to invest in your different skills.
Yeah.
And you're right. And it's like for every 1 soul, it takes like 10 to level up on your weapons on there.
I'm like, come on, you're almost there. And then when you don't make the level up meter, you're like, damn it, I gotta go find. Luckily, every room the enemies respawn, but also unluckily because there is a little bit of backtracking you want to do for certain treasures and things. But then, like, the guys just get in your way.
Yeah, and that's where I
points.
say, like, it's just like with Resident Evil where we learned, like, when we watch speedrunners, like, they avoid most fights.
Yeah.
And that's what I learned with this game because my mentality, just because I grew up with those games, like, you have to kill every enemy, right? That's just, for some reason, in the back of your head. And some levels, or some areas, right, you do have to kill all the enemies to progress. But in most instances, especially in this game, you can just run past everybody. Like, you have a pretty good, you have a good enough movement to where you can avoid most enemies if you want to avoid them.
But you also want their souls.
Exactly. So that's kind of the other side of it. It's like, you have to sort of mitigate how much you want to grind in order to level up your abilities. Because you also can, there's like a light crafting system in this game I actually didn't use much where if you have like the herbs, you can use souls to imbue them to, like, I think they're called medicines, right? You can get more health with them. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the thing with this game is that it has a lot of these great ideas, but they're also literally half-baked because they had this shift development to PS2, right? So it's like you have this leveling up system which works, it's perfectly sufficient, but maybe a little bit too grindy if you level everything up. And you also don't need to level anything up anyway, really. Like, for me, I leveled up the Lightning Blade, and then I really just focused on leveling up the magic attacks because you need to get those to the door, right?
Yeah.
But for the most part, like, you don't need that. This game's short enough to where you don't have to deal with having to max everything out unless you really want to do that.
I think as soon as I got the green, I call it the green blade, the Gale Blade or whatever, I immediately leveled up the green magic because I was like, I know there's going to be a door soon that's going to require this.
Yeah, and in that respect, like, it's, it does kind of confine you to that, right? Because I guess in a game where you want more agency, more freedom, you could say, well, I want to level up or focus leveling up on this.
Yeah.
But because this game is so brief, and like you said, yeah, you should focus on the magic tag as soon as you get a new weapon because you're ultimately going to have to face where you need a level 2 or level 3, and it's like, all right, well, I have to grind just a smidge to get through it.
I'm kind of vaguely remembering back to when I borrowed this, but I think I got stopped at, like, the first door that needs 2 red orbs. Because, like, I texted you when I fought Marcellus, and I got the green weapon. I was like, I didn't even know there was a third weapon in this game. Because I think back then I got to the level where I needed the 2 red orbs, the level 2 magic, and I hadn't been leveling that up. I'd been leveling up the weapons and maybe a little bit of the magic. And I just didn't want to grind after that.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the game too. It's like, and I almost feel like that's a way to again mitigate backtracking, because realistically, like, because of this brief game, there's not a whole lot of backtracking. Like there's some instances where you go back and forth between areas, but the map isn't that big, which, back then it felt like it was, because a lot of games just felt like it was much more massive.
There was a lot of rooms.
There's a lot of rooms, and some of the corridors are just nothing. Like, you're just literally connected to another area. Thank God there's no load times between between transitioning rooms and whatnot. There's some puzzles in here that are also pretty light. Like there's one where we even talk about Kaede. She's like your ninja confidant. Your I think they call them kunitsu, something like that. Female ninjas.
For some reason in my head she was a Yame, but that's a totally different game.
Yeah,
that's like Dead or Alive.
That's Dead or Alive. Yeah, that's a weird one there. She's also ninja. Again, Ninja Gaiden. She's in there. Yeah, but Kaede, she can't absorb souls, and it's interesting because she's sort of the twist to the gameplay here, where in the beginning she can't even kill the Genma enemies because she doesn't have a weapon that actually will kill them. It's really just to knock them down and move.
Oh wow!
Because at one point you're Samanosuke and you're I think you're like stuck in a separate section of the game, and she has to go find another pathway to open up to free him, kind of thing.
I did do the thing where these giant spikes keep coming up from the ground, and you have to keep pulling levers to. One of them pulls a lever, then you take control of the other one. You go to the next lever, you pull that, and you move through there. And then I got to the part where he gets trapped and the water's coming in, and you have to do that stupid sliding puzzle.
Oh my! So that sliding puzzle, let me tell you a little tidbit about that. So I got stuck at that way back then. And back then, I was also annoyed because, again, you can save however you want. There's free saves, but you do have to sit through a cutscene. And before you get to that water puzzle, you do have to kind of travel a little bit.
Yeah.
And I kept failing it over and over and over and over. And, this was, again, 2001. It's not like YouTube now where you go in and like you type whatever you want and there's always a result there.
That is certainly how I passed it.
Right? Yeah. So what I did back then is I was big on the GameShark.com message boards. And they actually had a guide on there, and they had a flash animation of how to solve the puzzle.
So it took you all day to download?
No, well, so I watched the download. Because my computer was downstairs, my PS2 was upstairs. So I stared at this thing, memorizing every single movement. And then once I did it, I basically committed to memory.
Yeah.
And then same thing. Every time I get to that puzzle now, when I play through it, I get a little bit of anxiety because I'm like, oh god, like I have to remember how to do this, because it's not that difficult. It's just once you realize what you have to do, it's not so bad, because it's just like a sliding puzzle where you slide these blocks around.
Yeah.
But it's funny you mention that, because I vividly remember getting stuck at that and having to go on GameShark.com and look at this freaking flash animation on how to solve it.
It's funny. I've actually now done it. I never did it back then because I never got to that point, but I did it in half the time, because the first half I was sliding it around and I totally messed up, and I hit the button that says, do you want me to reset? And I reset all the slides, and now you can see the water level is already halfway up, and I was like, I've heard infamous tales of this sliding puzzle. I better look it up. And then I did, and like you said, I committed it to memory. I just watched the YouTube video, and boom, 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 I cleared it with like half the time.
Yeah. So again, it's not a difficult puzzle once you know what to do.
Yeah.
But it's funny that's really is kind of a stopping point for some of us, because back then I was like, God, like this is freaking. What am I missing?
Yeah.
Thank God that Game Shark. I think his name was Danger Boy. I still remember him. He had posted the guide on there. I was like, thank God this exists, because I don't know what else I would have done. I would have had to wait for a magazine. I don't know how I would have solved it. I just had to figure it out at some point.
I mean, back then, like GameFAQs probably would have given you a written word version of it.
Yeah.
Okay, slide this little tab this way.
Yeah, he would have numbered every one of them. And said, like, move number 6, move number 7, clockwise, counterclockwise. Yeah, it would have been a mess.
Yep.
So yeah, you do play as Kaede, and you also get a second section with her later, and that's kind of a cool way to kind of differentiate the gameplay, where you have a whole different character to play as. She is quicker. I think she has like a flip move too that is somewhat helpful. But she's just meant to be like this quick stabbing ninja, and you really don't play for much long. Her section is probably like 15 minutes at best, depending on how long it'll take you to get through it. Because she's really just, again, I think it's meant to be like changing up the flow of the game, because a lot of the stuff that you rely on, like with Samanosuke, as far as like leveling up and all that, she doesn't do any of that.
No.
Like in fact, she does get a dagger that can slay the Genma, and then you do have an item that absorbs the souls, which I think gives it to Samanosuke, if I remember, because she can't harvest them, she can't use them for any reason. So it's really brief. Whether or not it deserves to be in the game, I don't know. I feel like it's cool because she is part of the story.
Well, it's again the style of the time. Like Resident Evil had Sherry and Ada, and
that's true.
Somebody that you would quickly play a short section of and then go back to the main person. So they've probably figured, yeah, why not? Let's put this in there as well. Plus, you get to play as a female hero for a little bit.
It's pretty cool. It's a nice little change of pace
Yeah.
for what it is. Eventually, so later in the game, you do go through this big old demon door. You have to collect. It's like a bow and arrow, and like this. It's like a holy bow kind of thing. And you open up the demon door, and then you go into Fortinbras's throne because again, you're rescuing Yumimaru and Princess Yuki, and they're held captive in this throne room. And you fight the god Fortinbras, who's huge. He's just like this big snake-like serpent monster. He has a lot of screen-filling attacks, which again back then really hard to navigate, but now it's like I fully understand his patterns and I can get through it. It's a bit of a long boss fight, especially because I didn't level up the weapons as much.
Yeah.
But he is pretty beatable if you know what to do and like just kind of eyeball his attacks. And then once you beat him, he ends up sort of capturing Samanosuke, and then some of the blood of Samanosuke drops on his Oni gauntlet, and that's when he transforms into an Onimusha, which is sort of like a demon slayer. And he stabs Fortinbras right in the eye because he's got this big ol' eye in his head.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. And then he and Nobunaga have this face-off as the room collapses, and at this point, it's sort of left with some ambiguity on what happens to Samanosuke. And then the game, at the end, fast-forwards a little while, and there's like this narration that says, Kaede died in battle 14 years later.
Damn.
Yuki and Yumimaru, they end up escaping because of Samanosuke, and they just travel the world as he suggested, which is funny. It's like, hey, once I save you, go travel. You know, travel the world. It's cool. And then the post-credits, they show Samanosuke alive, but he just sort of like drifts off into the unknown. So it's kind of, his story is left sort of open because at the end, you kind of assume that he's sort of the fallen hero, right? Like he's in the rubble with Nobunaga. We don't know what happened to either of them. And I think that leaves it up for a sequel where in the sequel, you don't even play as Samanosuke. He doesn't even appear back till Onimusha 3.
Wow.
So it's interesting that they left this open. And I forget how the story for 2 pans out because I haven't played it in, again, like 23 years. Like I finished it in a Blockbuster rental. So I don't remember too much of the story. I have to go play through it again. I don't know how much it's related to Onimusha 1. But it's crazy that, you know, I think Onimusha 3 was 2004, 2005. So for 4 years, you have no idea what happens to Samanosuke with this open-ended ending. Overall, Deucy, what do you say about this game? Because for me, I think we're kind of at the end here. Like, I think we covered everything there is to cover on this game.
Yeah, we did a good job with this one. Like I said, a remaster in the style of the Resident Evil remakes would be amazing, especially leading up to this new Onimusha that they announced, which I am looking forward to.
I'm stupidly excited about that one.
And also, like, find a way to bring 2 and 3 to PS Plus or something. Like,
yeah,
I would enjoy playing those finally as well.
I think that's one thing I'm really hopeful for is that it's really cool that PS Plus has been pretty consistently adding PS2 games almost every single month. Like even you saw me playing Indiana Jones and the Staff of King's Row, it's called.
Yeah, that was a surprise.
Right, it's a crazy surprise. Like I wouldn't expect that to ever be re-released on a modern console. Like it's the PS2 version, but it plays, you know, has some emulator enhancements. But it's great that it's an option. I hope that as it gets closer to the release of the new game, that they do release 2 and 3 at least. Because Dawn of Dreams, there's a few games in this series. There's Dawn of Dreams, which is like this. It doesn't even include Samanosuke. Like it's just like this weird team beat 'em up thing.
Were there ever like PSP versions or anything like that?
Blade Wars, which is when I showed you. It's that sort of Power Stone Smash Brothers fighting game. That's the only one I know of on PSP. And then they also had, like I said, Dawn of Dreams was on PS2. That was a 2006 release. So up until that new Onimusha, they really haven't done anything in the series in like, what is it, like 18, 19 years, something like that. So I'm really excited for it. If you want to get this game, like I mentioned before, you know, it's like usually $4 to $10 on PSN or Xbox Live or PC, and also on the Switch.
Yeah, this modern like remaster, if it's cheap like that, it is worth it.
It's worth it for the price of admission. Like, you know, 4 or 5 hour adventure, very solid. Like you'll deal with some annoyances from 2001, but I think the game is fun enough and its significance in the PS2 library is worthwhile for that price. If you want an original version, this is even more inexpensive. If you want a PS2 version, a loose copy, just the disc is about $9 and it's $10 complete. If you want an Xbox version for Genma Onimusha, that's sort of the definitive version that was released back then, it's only $9 loose for CD.
That's surprising.
And $13 complete. They're very inexpensive.
I mean, I would feel like the Xbox version was a little bit more rare than the PS2 version.
I would assume so too, because it's wild when we think about certain games and why they're expensive. Like these, it seems like they're not forgotten, but they're not like a Resident Evil, right? Where we see those, especially certain when they climb in price. These are just, you know, they're fine for what they are, but they're really affordable, like $15.
Yeah,
you know, if you have the hardware to run them. Otherwise, go the remaster and get it for $5 to $10. You know. All right, so I think that'll do it for our episode on Onimusha Warlords. If anyone out there wants to send us a note, again, it's at legiongamingpod@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram at Legion Gaming Podcast, and also on Blue Sky at Legion Gaming Podcast. Do you see any final words for Onimusha or Samurais or anything we're going into?
Just press start to continue.